Today I want to do an educational video on Axis pistols. This book is hardly available. Those of you who collect Axis pistols, you know that these are hard to come by. Easily they can be about $500, which is one of the reasons we do these videos, just to educate people about the different Axis pistols that are highly collectible. Now, just yesterday, I got a question on my videos basically saying, all you ever talk about is collecting Nazi pistols, and by doing so, you're glorifying the Nazis. Why not honor the Americans? Well, I do special videos just to honor our vets. But besides that, the way we honor our vets is to honor the things they brought home. When they came back from Germany or Japan, they didn't want to come back with American souvenirs. As part of being at war is you conquer the enemy and you take their stuff. Now, I'm not talking about looting or pillaging of any kind. I'm talking about when the enemy surrenders, they always surrender their weapons. And we had stockpiles of weapons, more than we knew what to do with, literally millions of weapons. Now, we had three choices. We could put them in storage, we could destroy them, or we could let the soldiers take some of them home. Turns out we did all three. Some were stored, many were put in burn pits and destroyed, and they estimate at least 1 million guns were brought home by the GIs. If you watch war movies, they always talk about the GIs looking for a Luger, looking for a souvenir, looking for a samurai sword, something they can bring home and tell the story, greatly embellished, to their family and friends. So, no glorification intended, but collecting Axis pistols is very educational, very historical, and it's a lot of fun. You'll meet a lot of great guys. So how do you get started? First, buy a book. Or watch as many videos as you can, and then pick out an area of expertise that you would like to specialize in. If you're like me, when I first read Axis pistols, I went through the book and I wanted at least one of everything. But after a while, you find that, well, it's like eating potato chips. You can't have just one. I have to have another one. So I started to really focus on Lugers and Walders. Most of you know that. I'm going to show you some. But there's a lot of other guns that I began to collect, including M1 carbines. One of the first rifles, carbine, I ever bought was an M1. And then also I've been collecting Colts for quite a while. If you watch my channel, you know that. Without any further ado, let's take a look at some of these from a collection that came in this week. So here we see a nice variety of Axis pistols. Now, just to simplify it, the Axis powers were all the belligerents that fought against the Allies. And in case you're not sure, the U.S. Army, certainly the Brits, the Canadians, the Australians, the French, they were all part of the Allies. And the Axis pistols, actually, we're going to go through each country that they came from. And when we talk about belligerents, you can't get much more belligerent than the Imperial Japanese Army. And they had Nambus. Here's a revolver that they used. But the most common weapons that they use in terms of sidearms, I'm only talking about sidearms, rifles would be another discussion. These are both Nambus, named after General Nambu, who actually did a lot of the design. Turns out the design was not that great. But this is the Type 14 Nambu, and this is the Type 94 Nambu. The best way to know when it was made, it's very simple. You turn this over. Again, this is simple, but for everybody, hopefully you'll learn something. If you look at these symbols, you can tell what arsenal it came out of. And I see 3, which is March, 3rd month, and a 19, so that's the date. 19, you add it to 25. Why 25? Because in the year of the emperor, he came to power in 25. 19 and 25 is 44. So this is 1944 March, so toward the end of the war. This one is in excellent condition. The finish, the original finish is about 90, 97, 98%. They called this the suicide gun, not because the officers used it to commit suicide, but because actually the Japanese officers called it the suicide gun because when it was cocked, if you happen to put it in your pocket and hit a button, you hit this sear. Yes, that did go off. All you have to do is bump that little plate there. It goes off in your leg. You get gangrene in the jungles, and you die. Now the magazine, a rig would come with a holster and 2 matching magazines. This one has the original magazine. Look at the last 3 digits, 583. And if you look at the magazine, 583. So this is a Type 94, beautiful condition, Japanese pistol. This is a little bit larger, by the way. These are 8mm. Operates in a similar fashion, except it doesn't have that sear as readily exposed. The same thing, you can read the date here. This is 19, so 1944, 10, so this is October of 1944, so really close to the end of the war. This also would have a magazine. It also has the symbols here, which would tell you which arsenal here. Here we see 934, and if we look here, it's a matching magazine. Now let's go to the Germans. When you think of the German army, you of course think of the German Luger, which was the most popular bring back for the GIs. Every GI wanted to bring back a German Luger, and all of the relatives were to write and say, hey, Uncle Phil, please bring back a German Luger. And then the P38. This one, 42 code, it means Mauser. We do have a book readily available on Mauser Lugers, and that's available on our website, so that you can get all of the codes, the 42 code, S42, and then the date is easy because it's stamped right there. In 41 and 42, they just put 41 and 42. They didn't use the 19. So you could see a BYF 42, meaning Mauser factory code in 1942. Most of them will have these wooden grips, both World War I and World War II, except for right at the end when you'll see these black plastic, often known as the Black Widow. These came in 9mm, as did the P38. This one is kind of interesting because it does have a matching magazine, which is rare to find. Most of them, unless it's forced match. Forced match is a euphemism for somebody went to their machine shop and made one and made it to match. So some people will call it fake, some people call it forced match, but this one is original matching magazine. There's the proof mark, which is an Eagle 655. You'll see the same proof mark right here, Eagle 655. Those are test firing proofs. And this does match, however, it has a 42 on top, which again, factory code of 42, factory code of 42. That's highly unusual, and I would assume that was an armorer's replacement, maybe made at the factory and replaced in the field, or just sent back to the factory, replaced, and then sent back to the front. So this is an all matching, including the magazine, very desirable German Luger. You can see the finish is kind of a high polish finish, and the wear is usually found on all of the high spots. Most of these guns, you'll see wear on any of the high spots that would have rubbed the leather here, here, and especially the hump. Now the P38, that was actually made by Walther, and so the code AC is the factory code. You can barely see it, but that is AC 45, so the Walther factory in 1945. One of the last ones made, by the way, and this is mismatch. So actually this mismatch means that the parts were still in the factory when the GIs came in April of 45. And the GIs put this together. The reason I picked it was because it just came in, but look at the plum hue. That's a plum color, and that has to do with the way the metal was prepped and the finish was put on. You can see the plum hue. You see one firing proof, which means the slide was approved for the military, but then it was never put together, and the final proof, there would be 3 proofs across here, including a firing proof, and then it was issued. In this case, they approved the part. They approved the part here, and I'm sure the barrel was approved, but it was then put together. It was found in parts in the factory, put together by the GIs. This also is 9mm Luger. There's the magazine. There's a lot less moving parts. This was an improvement over the Luger because it was cheaper to make. A lot less moving parts. People get in disputes as which is a better gun. I've shot them both. I just find this smoother and simpler, but that's anathema to some people who say the Luger is the best gun ever made, and then of course the American GIs say no, it wasn't the 1911 A1 Anyway, they're both highly collectible, and the prices just keep going up. The Luger would be more expensive than the P38, and these prices are going up gradually, but you can still get one, a really nice one, for about $1,500. Lugers, on the other hand, with this matching mag, are certainly going to be over $2,500. Now, let's take a look at the smaller caliber weapons, which would be 7.65. So with the Walther PP and PPK, also the Sauer, these are still German pistols. This is made in the Walther factory. One of the things I like about collecting Walthers is there's so many variations. I just did a video. There's police guns, there's army officers' guns. In this case, we have two here. One is an RJ. Right here, you see the symbol RJ, which is Reichsjustiz, which basically went to the Justice Department. So that anybody involved in the justice system, the courts, the court guards, the judge might even have one under his robe. But if within the judicial system, they ordered Walther PPs, again, 7.65. This is a beautiful high polished finish made in about 1940. You see the Eagle N proof, and then the marking for RJ. This is a very desirable gun because it's a rare variation and just a beautiful gun. And similar to it would be this Walther PP with RFV, which is Reichs Finance Bureau. So basically, this is the IRS. This is the Treasury Department. These guys came around. They carried guns because they were there to pick up your taxes. Also, they were in charge of collecting and dispersing Jewish property. So the Bureau of Taxation, once the Jews were forced to leave the country and later on forced into concentration camps, they would seize all their belongings and sell it off, maybe at auction, or a lot of times Nazi cronies would get businesses, houses, jewelry, paintings, all kinds of things that were sold fairly cheap as a way of getting more money into the German economy. So that would be the Finance Bureau. So a pretty dastardly group. Also included border guards and things like that, but still a dastardly group. Now look at the difference in finish. This one is a 1945 end of war. This is about 1939. Instead of the Eagle End proof, this has a Crown End proof. So this is about actually 38 or 39, and this is 1940. But take a look at the finish on this one, because as the war went on, they just like saving money on the P38, they saved money on the finishes. This is even a phosphate finish, which is very late. No longer do they have the logo. See the Walther factory logo. This one has no logo. They didn't bother. Instead, they used the factory code AC. Remember when we talked about factory code AC right here? Well, here you see factory code AC. So this was made in the Walther factory, and this is not, I was going to say this might be a GI mismatch. It's not. This does match. So this was right at the end. It was German, it was actually slave labor that put it together. There's no proof mark here and here, which means it was never issued. Again, proof mark here and here means it was test fired and issued. No proof mark here tells me that it was never issued. It was in the factory when the GIs came in, and somebody brought it home as a souvenir. Here is the wooden grip with the Walther logo, and again, this requires some oil products or petroleum products, and they were running low on oil, so they would use a wooden grip. And if we look at the magazine, a lot of times these are phosphate. This one is not phosphate, this is blued, has a W, which means unhardened. Also skipping this step, they didn't bother hardening it. It was basically the lips were hardened to keep them from spreading or cracking. And they didn't bother with that step. They didn't bother with this step. They didn't even bother test firing it. The American Army was on its way. And again, early April, they took over the factory. Now that's the PPs. What about PPKs? Again, lots of variations. Look at the nice high polish on this. Fire blue safety. This is Crown End, so it's early high polish again, probably 1936, 37, and this one is marked DRP, stands for the Postal Service, so this is the German Postal Service, and these were postal police or guard. So just like we have postal inspectors, this would have was a very small contract, by the way. This is a very rare small contract gun. You see the fire blue. You can see how the finish is so beautiful. It only has a little bit of wear here. I'd say this is about 97, 98% gun. It has a nice finger extension magazine. Again, went to a postal inspector. And not a lot of need for guns. This was probably in a drawer or in somebody's sock drawer for a lot of years, did not get much wear at all. So a beautiful example of a Walther PPK issued in Germany before the war even started. Another contract would have been bank guards. This shoulder holster goes over your shoulder and could go inside a suit jacket. So you could put that if you were a bank teller or a bank guard. This was issued to a bank, and the way we know that is because they did something special with this. There's the holster right here, actually. You can see the maker, and it says 1941. So 1941, you can see the maker. So this is a shoulder holster. So here, this is very early, by the way. This is as early as 1931, maybe 1932. And the bank had them number the slide, and it was pantographed right here. So the frame is numbered, and the slide is pantographed, and that is a bank variation. If you look at this DRP, you don't see any serial number here, and no PP or PPK has that pantographed other than the bank guns. And yes, they did make them for in a PP and a PPK. They also made them in 32 caliber and 22 caliber. Some people, maybe sexist, I don't know, they would say the 22 caliber was for the female bank tellers. I don't know that that's true, but they just said they prefer not having the kick. Now, I don't think that's insulting at all, because I take my wife to the range, and her favorite gun to shoot is a 22 caliber PPK. This is 7.65. So not only did they pantograph it here, but they also numbered, two matching magazines numbered right here on the finger extension. The only ones that did that was the bank contract. And so we'll put this down and move on to a different maker. This is a Mauser HSC. So here's a picture of the model 1934 Mauser. And the sales were really dying off on the 1934. People were looking for an improvement. And of course, Walther was kicking their butts in terms of sales. So Mauser said, not only can we make a nice 9mm in a Luger, but we can also make a 7.65. And they came out with the HSC, model HSC design. A nice little pistol. This one went to the military. It has Eagle 135, which means it was made around 42, 43. You can see the finish is kind of a high polish, but dulling down a little bit. Let's just compare this finish with this finish. You can see this is an early, very high polish. This is dulling down a little bit. And the ultimate dulling down is this one, where it almost looks like a phosphated finish. Okay, so this is the HSC, a very popular German Axis pistol. These are a lot cheaper than the PPK. I can pick these up for about $1,000, $1,200, at the most $1,500. And then there are some rarer variations that would be more. Speaking of nice German pistols, this is the Sauer 38H. This one, Waffen-proof right here, that's an Eagle 37. This is a very advanced design, 7.65, put together by Sauer & Sons and meant to compete with the PPK. Again, a very good German pistol, and certainly a lot cheaper than the PP and PPK. Serial number is over here. It has a really interesting cocker and decocker. So if I cock it and I change my mind, I can decock it just by doing that. Now, I can also cock it the same way. That takes a little bit of strength. Please don't judge me, but decocking is easier. Cocking it, there you go. And now it's cocked, decocked. Safety here. Sauer & Sons, SS is not for the SS troops, but Sauer & Sons. Beautiful design, Waffen stamp. Very popular gun to collect for Axis pistols. Now, I think we're done with the Germans, But the Germans also took over countries. And remember, when they took over countries, they did not allow people to keep their guns. They collected all the guns. If you were caught with a gun, you would be executed, tortured, and then executed. And so when they took over, they also took over the factory. This is the Browning FN factory. There's the FN, and this was in Belgium. This is an early one. When they first took over, you can see it's kind of has a high polished finish. So this is from about 1940. You can see the Waffen stamp, and that's actually a Waffen 140. It's stamped in a couple places. So while it was made for the Belgians, maybe the Belgian army, when the Germans came in, they took over the factory and they confiscated all the guns and used them for the German army. So this is an example of an Axis pistol, a country that was occupied, and another good example, a lot more famous, this is a model 1922, but another example of the FN Browning pistol that was extremely popular is this high power, and it was the first gun that would have the stacked magazine, and therefore you could almost double the number of rounds. I believe it held 13 rounds. And that was revolutionary at the time. It was a favorite among the SS troops. We do sell quite a bit of them. They do sell at a premium, whereas this 1922 is quite a bit cheaper, again, maybe in the $1,000 range. And that's a beautiful high polished finish. So this is an early example. Later examples didn't have as nice a finish, and it would have a wooden grip. So of course, not only did they take over Belgium, but they also took over France. So when they took over France, they collected all the weapons, as previously discussed, and they took over the factory. This is considered a SACM, a French SACM. Here is the Waffen stamp, which means it was approved for the German army. So they took over, they used slave labor to continue making guns. An inspector from Germany would come in and put the inspection stamp. This is a Waffen 251, I believe, is the inspector proof. This is an interesting gun because it's anodized metal, and you can see from the finish, it's very different. It almost looked like a spray paint, a lacquered spray paint, but they also took over and the Germans made for their own use. This is a French unique and then a French MAB. All of these variations were used by the German army using German inspectors and then seized by the Germans. These are also, most of them are 32 caliber as well. Okay, now this is a country that went both ways. They were transitioning, I guess. This is the Italian army under Mussolini. It was part of the Axis powers. So Japan, Germany, and Italy were the Axis powers. And this was made for the Italian army, so it would be Italian made. But then later, they, of course, turned on Mussolini, killed him and his mistress, and the Germans immediately came in and took over the government and took over the factory and continued making these Berettas, model 1934 and 1935. The difference is model 1934 was in 9mm, but the Germans preferred 7.65. For their smaller weapons, they preferred the 7.65, and so the model 1935 made for the German army was usually in 32 caliber. This one is 9mm short, so caliber is 9mm short, made for the Italian army, I'm sure later procured for the German army. And so this is an Axis pistol, again, a lot more affordable and a very reliable, beautiful weapon. Who else did they take over? Of course, the Polish, actually 1939, that was the first occupied territory. And well, unless you count the CZ, he took over Czechoslovakia. I think he annexed most of Czechoslovakia. So we're going to take a look at a Czech gun. This is a Polish Radom, and you can see it has Waffen proofs, and this is Waffen 77. Beautiful high polished finish, so it's an early one. Not slotted, that's a whole nother story. They had them slotted for a stock, and then later the Germans did away with the stock. This is in the E block, so it's pretty early, probably made in early 1941, late 40 or early 41. Very popular, the Polish Radom or Viz. Now I mentioned Czechoslovakia, that was annexed. It wasn't as much an invasion as it was an annexation. So this is a Czech pistol. Now, when we look at this pistol, they usually are blued. This is a CZ Model 27, but here's a blued example. Most of them, 98% of the ones you see will be blued. This is all phosphated, so this is right at the end of the war. Again, they were simplifying the process and also making it cheaper. I'm told this is a much cheaper finish, and usually it's quite worn. Even the magazine is phosphated, and the spare magazine is phosphated. So you can see this is all phosphated, end of war, probably 1945. This factory was taken over by the Russians. You can see that even the CZ logo is gone. Take a look at the earlier version. Not only is it blue, but you see that factory logo CZ. And toward the end of the war, they didn't even bother with the logo. They were just stamping these and getting them out as quickly as possible. So this factory was taken over by the Germans, and they produced weapons for the German army. This is a complete rig with a CZ holster to go with it. Now, my final gun from this one, there are other Axis pistols. I can't do them all, but these are just ones that came in this week. I wanted to show them to you. Final one, do you recognize it? Yeah, the Model 37. This is a Femeru. Now, the Femeru factory was making the Model 37 before the Germans took over, but when the Germans came in, they produced them for themselves. You can see right here is a Waffen stamp. Or in Germany, Waffen. I should have said that early on. The barrel is often also, probably can't even see it, but there's a little tiny firing proof here. You can see the barrel matches. This is matching. And on the slide, you can see JHV. Just like AC was the factory code, that was the factory code for the Femeru. And it's 41. Now, they made 30,000 of these for the Luftwaffe in 41. They made another 30,000 in 43. So the only two dates you're going to see on the Femeru is 41, 43. The fact that they all went to the Luftwaffe, to me, is a huge plus. And so I love collecting these, especially if they have a matching magazine. And this one has a matching magazine. If I had two matching magazines, that would be the ultimate. And put it with this Luftwaffe marked 1942 holster in mint condition. This makes for a beautiful rig and highly collectible Axis pistol. Okay, that was a lot of work and a lot of information, but you need to get busy because look at all these guns. If you want to start collecting, there's plenty to get started with. Of course, I recommend buy from a well-known dealer. A lot of guns have been refinished, they've been touched up, cold blue. A lot of them, they have the Waffen stamps added because when you take a typical Sachem, it's about half the price. A French Sachem is about half the price as the one with a Waffen stamp. So there are people who will use fake Waffen stamps. Buy from somebody you know and trust or a reputable dealer. Check out our website and you can find all of these variations, hopefully at a price you can afford. So let's get busy.